Good day to all of you. Today we shall discuss on the topic interrupts. Specifically on the question, explain how to handle interrupt from multiple devices using daisy chain and priority scheme. This is question number 8a in the model question paper of the subject Digital Design and Computer Organization with the subject code BCS 302. Our sincere thanks to author Carl Hamacher of the textbook Computer Organization 5th edition. The content of this discussion is taken from this textbook. Before that, let us know what is an interrupt. An interrupt is a hardware signal sent by an I/O device to the processor requesting for a service from the processor. That is, whenever an I/O device wants the service from processor, it sends a hardware signal to the processor requesting for the service, and that hardware signal is called as interrupt. There are n number of I/O devices being connected to the processor. Each can send the interrupt signal to the processor independently. Then whose request will be accepted? The I/O devices are organized in a priority structure. The device having higher priority will get served first. Its interrupt signal will be accepted first. Suppose already if processor is serving a device of lower priority, then higher priority device interrupts. Processor suspends the execution of the program serving the device of lower priority, switches the control to the interrupt service routine of higher priority device. After completion of serving that device, it comes back to lower priority device. Next, we shall discuss on interrupt priority scheme. The figure shows implementation of interrupt priority using individual interrupt request and acknowledge lines. That is, there are n number of devices, device 1, device 2 until device P. Each is connected to processor through their own interrupt request and interrupt acknowledge lines. When device 1 wants the service from the processor, it sends a request signal on its own interrupt request line which is connected to the processor. When processor is ready to serve device 1, it sends a interrupt acknowledge signal on interrupt acknowledge line of that device. This way, every device is connected to processor through their own request and acknowledge lines. Each device is independent in requesting the processor for service by sending interrupt request signals. Then whose request will be accepted first? In processor, we have priority arbitration circuit. It sets different priority to different request lines of the devices, and that device whose request line has higher priority, their interrupt request signals will be accepted first. Because each device is connected to processor through their own interrupt request and acknowledge lines, this kind of scheme requires more number of wires. Okay, this is all about interrupt priority scheme. Next, let us know about daisy chain scheme of handling multiple devices interrupt request. The devices are connected in daisy chain fashion. The interrupt request line is common to all the devices, but interrupt acknowledge signal propagates serially through the devices. When several devices raise an interrupt request and INTR bar line is activated, the processor responds by setting INTA line to 1. If device 1 has pending request for interrupt, it blocks INTA signal and proceeds to put its identifying code on the data lines. Therefore, in the daisy chain arrangement, the device that is electrically closest to the processor has the highest priority. The second device along the chain has second highest priority, and so on. Unlike priority scheme which explained earlier, this daisy chain arrangement requires less wires. So what is happening here? If device 1 has raised the request and processor has sent INTA signal, then device 1 will block the INTA signal and it will notify the processor its identifying code. Then processor serves that device by executing interrupt service routine corresponding to device 1. Suppose if device 2 has raised the request, then device 1 will not block the INTA signal. It will pass the INTA signal to device 2. Device 2 will block this and notify the processor its identifying code, and hence processor serves device 2 by executing interrupt service routine which corresponds to device 2. This is how the device which is electrically closest to processor has highest priority. It is served first. Only when it doesn't block the INTA signal, it will reach the other device, and the other devices will have the lower priority. That is all about daisy chain scheme of handling multiple devices interrupt request. Let us consider the next scheme of handling multiple devices interrupt request. This is the combination of both priority scheme and daisy chain scheme. Here n number of IO devices are arranged in different groups. Again, in each group they are connected in daisy chain fashion. The priority arbitration circuit assigns different priority to different groups. So this is one group, second group, like that many groups. According to priority arbitration circuit, different groups have different priority. So the devices which are connected in of higher priority are served first. Again, in that group, because they are connected in daisy chain fashion, the device which is electrically nearer to processor is served first. So most of the computer system follow this kind of organization. That completes the discussion regarding the question. So what was the question? Explain how to handle interrupt from multiple devices using daisy chain and priority scheme. In this, what we discussed, first we got to know what is an interrupt, then we discussed about priority scheme, then daisy chain scheme, and the third one, which is the combination of both the priority scheme and daisy chain scheme. That completes the discussion. I hope you understood. Thank you.